What's good, my dear language learning master? And welcome to a new episode of the Language Input Podcast, in which my goal is to help you understand that we can all learn any language when enjoying the process every step of the way. That's right. And I'm totally convinced, and I really want to help you understand and sort of internalize that, if you haven't, I've talked about it many times, but if you haven't learned your favorite language yet, it doesn't mean that you're not good at languages. It doesn't mean that you're never going to be able to do it. No, it just means that, you've probably been following the traditional grammar approach, which is unfortunately so dominant all over the world. So, it's all about the approach. So believe me. And this is not just, like I'm always saying, this is not just delusional motivational stuff. That you can learn any language, believe me, while enjoying the process. And because I've been on both sides of the equation, if you will, and believe me, it's totally possible. All right. And with that being said, in today's topic, in today's episode, I want to talk about a specific language resource that I've been using a lot recently. And I want to go more in depth about it and explain the reasons why I think it's super useful. All right. So let's get into today's episode. And the reasons I'm talking about is podcasts. Yeah. So it's a perfect episode, right? Like a podcast episode to talk about podcasts. All right. And first of all, when I want to be clear on something, like when I'm talking about podcasts to learn a language, and this is for mainly for content creators. Like whenever we think about a podcast to learn a language, once again, because of that traditional grammar approach, we think about, or we end up creating podcasts in which, once again, we focus on form as opposed to message or communication. So we start, even though we do it in a podcast format, we start talking about specific tenses or like I mentioned in the episode about, what was it? In the episode about those specific targeted courses, like I don't know, business Spanish or French for travelers or whatever. That the idea behind them, it's not that bad. It's okay, but it's just the conscious approach to it. Is the problem. So that works for podcasts as well, right? And so when I'm talking about podcasts to learn a language, I'm not talking about podcasts that focus on consciously teaching you the language. You know what I mean, right? Like, it's a podcast format, but they still talk about grammar in some sense, or conjugations or whatever it is, or about the conscious learning of the language, right? So when I'm talking about podcasts or using podcasts to learn a language, I'm talking about podcasts about a completely different topic that you're interested in. So again, you sort of listen to the podcast because you're interested in the topic itself, and language learning or language acquisition happens as a sort of side effect. All right. So to a certain extent, you're so interested in the topic itself that you nearly forget that you're listening to a different language. All right. So that's the kind of podcast I'm talking about. Yeah. And as usual, I'd say, it really depends on your level in that specific language, but I'd say it's most appropriate for intermediate learners of specific language. But again, like in every other episode, like every single resource that I talk about in this podcast, it all comes down to giving it a try, and if you understand what's going on, if you understand the message, you understand, what that person's talking about, great. go ahead, because it's going to be a tremendously useful resource and fun, right? Because you're interested in the topic itself, like I said. And if you can't understand what's going on, like I'm always saying, just get back to something easier and you'll get there later on down the line, right? And again, I'll repeat myself here, but if you can't understand a podcast yet, it doesn't mean that you're not talented for languages or whatever the belief is, right? It just means you didn't get to that point yet, and you need to get more comprehensible input from slightly easier resources, all right? So in the end, it all comes down to that, to whether you understand the message or not, okay? But with that being said, from my own personal experience, they're probably gonna be hard for you if you're just starting out with a language. Well, if you're starting out with a language, you're not gonna be able to understand them. But if you're a beginner, they're still probably gonna be tough to understand. But again, just give it a try, all right? And the reason why I think they're super useful is, well, first of all, they're really trendy right now. And there's so many different topics to choose from. Like pretty much anything you're interested in, you can find it, right? So that's always an advantage, obviously, because whether you're interested in history, sports, board games, traveling, chemistry, philosophy, whatever the topic, you're going to be able to find some podcasts that talk about it, right, in your target language. So that's the first super advantage they have. And then actually I've started using podcasts a lot in over the last 12, 13 months, right? Yeah, pretty much since the whole pandemic thing started. So, and I was reluctant to get started with podcasts when it comes to them helping me learn a language because of the lack of, the visual input or the visual part of it that helps you understand the message. So I was kind of reluctant at the beginning, but then I realized that because of the nature of podcasts, not having, images or visual action to help you understand the message, usually content creators, podcasters, they usually make an effort to speak a little bit slower, a little bit more clear. Even they might not realize it, but they do that actually, and that's super helpful when it comes to learning a language, because they're gonna slow down a little bit, just enough for you to understand what they're talking about. And it's not like like watching a series or a movie in which it's just pure native language speech, and with the background noise, and so it might be hard to understand. But with podcasts, first of all, there's no background noise whatsoever, okay? And well, there's usually some music in the background, but really, really low. That doesn't really affect the experience, right? So there's no background noise to sort of distract you from, or to distract you from actually paying attention to the content, right? And then, like I said, and I've realized this myself when I'm creating a podcast. Like I tend to speak a little bit slower and more, in a more clear way, like especially when I'm creating the one in Spanish, because that's my native language, and I'm about to start speaking, and I realize afterwards that I sort of slow down a little bit. Like I don't speak really fast in general, but I think I do slow down a little bit, and I try to speak more clear, which always helps, like I said. Yeah. So yeah, that's one more of the reasons why I think they're super useful. And another reason is that when you're, at least this is my case, when you're watching a series or a movie or a documentary, whatever it is, or reading a book, you actually need to be focused on it. right? Like you need all your conscious attention, right? If that makes sense. Of course, conscious attention on the message, right? On the content, not grammar or form, right? So, and the good thing about podcasts is, and again, this is all about self-awareness as well, because, for instance, in my case, the advantage I'm going to talk about is the fact that you can actually multitask, when you're listening to a podcast. And the reason why I mentioned self-awareness is because in my case, depending on the second activity that I'm working on at that specific moment, or depending on the topic of the podcast, there's certain times in which I can perfectly multitask and others in which I just can't. And I'll give you an example in a moment so you understand what I mean, all right? And in general, I'm not a friend of multitasking at all, because I think it's just, if you're doing several things at the same time, you're not focusing on any one of them. And I've seen it with anything that I, like from watching my favorite sports to any other activity that if I'm really focused on them, first of all, if they're in a different language, I understand way more, and I actually enjoy them more as well. So I'm not a friend of multitasking in general, but because of the nature of podcasts, you actually don't need that super conscious attention because there's no visual action to follow, right? And then, to give you an example, so, let's say that I'm cleaning up at home or I'm cooking, and I realize in those sorts of activities, or while I'm doing those sorts of activities, I can actually listen to podcasts when the topic is sort of, how to put it into words, like a light topic that is not really. Let me give you an example. So I'm getting more and more interested in board games, all right? And I actually created an episode for that. Because, I used to love them as a kid, and I realized there's so many out there right now, and they're super useful. They're fun, and they can be super useful when it comes to learning a language as well. So I'm really getting into them recently. And, I also try to listen to podcasts related to board games, but not episodes in which they actually explain the rules like a YouTube tutorial. No, because you do need your conscious attention in those videos, but they talk about the world of board games, like new releases, or, so it's sort of a light topic that you don't need your full attention on, if that makes sense. So I've realized that I can be cleaning up at home or cooking and listening to those types of podcasts at the same time. So that's like a huge advantage as well, because you don't even need to find the extra time to enjoy them, right? So you're getting quote unquote free input, right? But then I'm also getting into philosophy recently, because I always thought it was such an interesting topic, but just the way it was taught in high school and so on was just horrible, like pretty much anything else. But that's another topic. But my point is, that's more of a harder topic, right? That's more of a topic that you need to really be focused in order to understand what's going on, or what in order to understand the ideas, the philosophers are talking about. Or so I've also realized that it's not really a good idea to multitask if you're listening to that type of podcast, right? But again, that's why I mentioned self-awareness, right? Or again, if you're listening to a travel podcast, again, that's more of a light topic as well, like the board game case. So I can also just clean up at home or cook, like I said, and listen to those podcast episodes at the same time, right? But again, it all comes down to your personal experience and situation and self-awareness, like I said. Because many times I found myself trying to multitask in order to get that quote-unquote free input, only to realize a little later that I wasn't really enjoying any of the two activities I was working on, and I understanding what was going on in either of them, right? So it all comes down to self-awareness and telling yourself the truth, right? But in those examples that I gave you, I found it actually useful to listen to podcasts. Well, I found it appropriate to listen to those kinds of topics while I'm doing a different activity in the house, or if you go for a run, I love sports, but I'm not a big fan of running. I need like some sort of ball or skills involved in it. So, but if you like running, that might also be a good activity, or it might be worth giving it a try. So yeah, just to give you some examples or ideas, right? But yeah, that's pretty much it. What I wanted to touch on today in today's topic and today's episode, because I've actually discovered them recently. I mean, not podcasts, but the fact that they can be useful for language learning. So yeah, like I'm always saying, give them a try, and because it's such a fun time that you're gonna have. Like from my experience, it's just I'm getting input in my target language, which is great. And at the same time, I'm having fun. I'm enjoying the process. I'm learning more things about a specific topic that I'm interested in. So and I talked about it in the episode about my language routine or my daily routine. But on any given day, I can listen to 20 to 25 minutes of podcasts in 4 or 5 different languages about 4 or 5 different topics that I'm super interested in. So it's just fun. So that's why I think they're such an interesting resource or activity when it comes to learning a foreign language. All right. So yeah, with that being said, one last time, I do believe they're the most appropriate for the intermediate level. But again, just give them a try, and tell yourself the truth, whether you understand what's going on or not, and act accordingly, right? But yeah, I just wanted to talk about podcasts more in depth because of how interesting I think they are. All right. And there's such a boom recently that, like I said at the beginning of the episode, there's pretty much any topic you're interested in, you're going to be able to find podcasts in your target language. And especially if the language you're looking to learn is Spanish or French or I mean, obviously English. But if you're trying to learn, say, I don't know, Swahili or Zulu from South Africa. I actually have a friend who teaches Zulu, but you get the point. It might be a little bit harder to find resources, but if it's like a really popular language, or a language with a lot of speakers like French, English, Spanish, I'm sure you're gonna be able to find several different podcasts that talk about your favorite topics. All right. So yeah, that's it for today, everyone, and I thank you once again for listening to this episode, for listening all the way through to the end. And yeah, I'll see you in the next episode, which I'll talk about a different topic related to language learning. And as usual, let me know in the comment section below what your opinion on this topic is, any other question, suggestion, idea you may have when it comes to this process. And yeah, let me remind you that we can all learn any language when enjoying the process every step of the way. I won't get tired of repeating this. And with that being said, I wish you a good day, whatever you might be, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye. Thank you.